Hello and welcome to the brand new episode of Gyan from the Pehlwan. Today we have Tarusha from AuroPocket. AuroPocket is one of the first DeFi platforms in India. Thank you, Tarusha. Thank you so much for joining with us. We would love if you can give us a quick introduction of what AuroPocket does and a bit of an introduction about yourself. What essentially inspired you to start a DeFi platform in India, considering the current stance of what do you say apprehensiveness from the government around this entire segment per se.
Right. Hi again, Shreyas. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, as you mentioned already, I'm the co-founder and CEO of OroPocket and the underlying products that kind of fall under the OroPocket umbrella. So, OroPocket in itself is a standalone fintech app wherein users can invest in digital gold and digital silver, which is like a Paytm gold, or say like a gold, or gold that you can invest on in PhonePe. And
Hmm.
on top of that, the difference here is that on top of these investments, we kind of provide a lot of financial services as well, making these investments highly liquid. What I mean by that is that we have like a send by UPI feature, wherein you can use your gold like cash for day-to-day transactions. The idea here is to basically provide a better platform than say any bank where you'll be putting your fiat in, because your fiat kind of gets devalued year after year there because
Hmm.
of inflation, and it's not even 100% insured. So we kind of cover both those things. We are making sure that users get exposed to different kind of asset classes. Right now we have gold and silver. We will be adding more asset classes, and we offer, as I mentioned, financial services and 100% insurance. So even if, God forbid, the company goes under, you will still have your assets that are insured and allocated to you, and you can redeem them. So that is what OroPocket does. Open DeFi is the second platform, and it is exactly like OroPocket, and it has a mix of NFTs as well. And that is
Hmm.
more DeFi facing. Then there is Unifarm, which is a group farming and staking protocol, which is a completely it's a DApp, a completely DeFi facing, crypto facing platform. And a little about me. So I've been a deep tech entrepreneur since 2011. That is
Wow.
when my co-founder and I had started
Hmm.
a data center company, yeah, in like Delhi. So we basically bootstrapped a data center and we made it successful. Like we broke even basically in 6 months, and we were
Oh.
doing well with it. But then it was called Cloud Reno. So we kind of created like a cloud platform is on top of it, because data centers obviously they were like on their way out. Cloud was the way to go. So we
Hmm.
created a platform on top of that, which would help users in managing their cloud infrastructure. It was completely, OS agnostic. It's called Cloud Reno, as I mentioned earlier. Basically, it's like, think of it
Hmm.
like a DigitalOcean, or like an AWS, but with
Got it.
AWS coming in with all their credits and all, we had to we couldn't scale that beyond a point, and that is when we actually started looking at crypto. So unofficially, without a platform, we were I was in crypto since I've been in crypto since 2012, 13.
Hmm.
Basically, we had all this hardware and we wanted to just tinker and figure out how to do mining, and see if our hardware would be any good there. So it was just curiosity that got us into this space. And then formally, we kind of we were the founders of one of the first Ethereum exchanges of India, which was called
Oh wow.
Ethics. But
Hmm.
the RBI order that had come in, that kind of was very detrimental to our business continuity, because we hadn't raised money. So at that point, the only option that we had was either to move our operations abroad, or because there was no bank support, right? And it's very difficult for an exchange to execute any kind of transactions without, unless you're a P2P exchange, without the bank support. So the
Right.
only option was either move abroad or shut it down. So we started the process of shutting it down, because we did not have, it was a
Hmm.
very tedious process, like 5 years, 6 years ago, to sort of start like a company abroad and setting it up without traveling perhaps. So it was just a lot of hassle. So then that is when OroPocket was born, because we really were very affected by the PMC Bank debacle, and how Yes Bank almost failed, and we
Hmm.
realized that people this entire system that people rely on so much, there is an illusion of reliability because this entire traditional financial system is very, very fragile, and the way it is created is there is too much power there. So some kind of dismantling of power needs to happen, because banks should not be able to tell you how much money you can withdraw in a day, and what you can do with your money, and
Right.
not even have you insurance on top of it. Like if a bank shuts down because of what they have been doing, you are the one who's suffering, because there is just like an insurance. I think with the PNC thing, at that time it was 1 lakh, and then it was increased to say 5 lakh. So that number is still very small for somebody if they're putting in their life savings into the bank, right?
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
that is kind of something that really pushed us, and we wanted to build a entire financial ecosystem wherein this kind of a thing wouldn't happen. And obviously one thing led to kind of another. We are very, very fascinated by blockchain, and we are blockchain students. So that is how we again got into the blockchain space as well. It's very exciting, and it's exciting to give users an alternative.
Perfect. That is amazing. I mean, that sounds like a very interesting journey that you have had. I mean, what I see as a pattern is you being at least one of the technology pioneers in India for all the new technologies that are coming in, from cloud to Ethereum exchanges to now DeFi. I think that essentially is a sign of genuine curiosity and willingness to disrupt at any costs. I mean, that is amazing.
Thank you so much.
Uh,
I've never really called myself a pioneer, but thank you for saying that. I never thought of it that way. It was just about making things work. That's it. Creating
it does
things that will
seem
actually
like it.
work.
Yeah, yeah. So indeed. So I mean, I just like to like take a few steps back to when you spoke about open finance, open DeFi, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
as of now in India, cryptocurrency is in boom, and I mean, since the regulations are always in a gray area since the last couple of years, government's current
Hmm.
stand, as far as I know, is that the RBI tried to regulate it, and Supreme Court essentially stopped them in their tracks. So right now, it's an
Hmm.
unregulated segment in which anyone can invest, and that is a very scary place to be for investors because they don't know where their money is going, who the parties behind there are, and there are a lot of people essentially there to take their money away, including schemes like rug pulls and all of that. So where does
Right.
DeFi fit into that? Essentially, just wanted to understand first. This is basically a two-fold question, right? First, wanted to understand what your view on the current regulation is, and
Hmm.
what kind of regulations should be put into place so that people don't lose their money to schemes like rug pulls and those kind of scenarios. And then we will jump on to DeFi at a later stage.
Sure. So, like you kind of mentioned that the policy aspect in India has been quite in limbo for some time now.
Mhm.
So, essentially, what had
Mhm.
happened in 2017 was that RBI pushed out an order saying that banks should not help or for support or offer their support to basically entities, not financial entities, any corporate or any company that is providing
Mhm.
or dealing in crypto. It was not exactly a ban, but it was perceived as a ban by all the news and the media. You can't really ban cryptocurrencies because it's decentralized, right? By the very nature,
Agreed.
they are decentralized. You can't, unless you are able to stop the internet, you can't really stop cryptocurrencies. But yeah, obviously, you can make it illegal to hold them. But then again, how exactly would you really come to know, considering these wallets are pseudonymous in nature, and how would the policymakers really go back that much to understand? I'm sure that it can be done, and if you want to penalize people and make an example out of them, it can be done. But then again, this is like pushing this entire space into this gray market, gray area, right? So if your end goal is to protect the user, because by policy, then that is not the way to go about doing things. Like there are so many countries now, even USA, uh, that are actually actively trying to regulate it, like tax crypto as a commodity, and put in like licenses, etc. So there is standardization in terms of what kind of information a user is being asked for, and centralized exchanges or centralized services. So then again, here, what you said, that okay, there are a lot of schemes. See, this is something that I think happened everywhere, right? So this is not just a twofold question. I think this has many aspects to it. But the policy condition in India has been a little bit of in a limbo, vis-a-vis crypto for several months, years now. But that I believe is not again the prohibitory stance that kind of was taken by RBI. It was not really an outright ban in 2017. What they had said was essentially that the companies that are dealing in crypto or are providing crypto services, banks should not be supporting them with their services. That
Right.
obviously is you kind of take away the banking support, then it becomes difficult for anybody to be dealing with fiat in the digital form and then be purchasing or buying these cryptos. But then again, there are P2P exchanges as well that kind of that run fully on a trustless sort of a system that people do indulge in those transactions as well. But here again, my perspective is simple, that if your end goal is to protect the end user, right,
Mhm.
with policy that would actually support or kind of safeguard the user, then you cannot really be pushing this into the gray area, wherein there is like it's like a prohibitory order that you come in. So again, here it's good to mention that nobody can really ban crypto because unless you perhaps stop the internet. But the
Right.
only thing that you can perhaps do is say that, okay, whoever is holding crypto is going to be penalized. So then again, that kind of begs the question: how would you even come to know, considering that these wallet addresses are pseudonymous? Maybe you can penalize people, and by obtaining their wallet addresses from these centralized exchanges or the data from the centralized exchanges and then going after them, making an example. But what you are essentially
Mhm.
doing is you are kind of pushing this entire industry and this innovation into a small peg, right? And you are kind of making sure that the nefarious, activities, they kind of continue because unchecked, right, and in a very manner which is completely opaque, because there is no policy. You banned it, then people would still be dealing with it. So there is no way for you to safeguard these people with like a prohibitory policy. So there are so many countries now all over the world. Even USA has kind of started taxing it and taxing crypto as a commodity and giving licenses to entities who are dealing with crypto in a certain manner, to just to make sure that the standardization and that the end user can be kind of be taken care of. So my stance is simple. I think that you can't really push innovation on blockchain and say that, okay, we are banning crypto. Those two things are two sides to the same coin, and you can't like have one side and go like, okay, I'm not going to deal with the second side. The idea here of blockchain and crypto is decentralization. You essentially put anything on blockchain, you're tokenizing it. So you can't really push for innovation in blockchain and say that, okay, no, we are going to ban crypto. So that there is quite a cusp there and a chasm
Mhm.
there, but in the interpretation, and it's better to perhaps create a framework around it that would be inclusive rather than kind of excluding all of these people who are actually working in this space already and cause like massive brain drain. So as I said, crypto will not be stopped, but these entities, people involved in it, they'll maybe move out. And you wouldn't want that kind of massive brain drain to happen. Like, amazing tech talent would move away, because if you make it kind of really difficult for these businesses to keep operating in India. Now, regarding your question about the rug pulls and the scams, so this is something that I
Mhm.
say a lot. I feel that there are scams in any industry, right? There'll always be people who will be like a bad element to it. Like even in the traditional financial system, all scams till date have happened in that system, right? With the
Agreed.
cash and with the economy, with these policies that are already existing. So it's kind of a little myopic and stupid to say that, okay, only scams are happening here. It's just that they are
Mhm.
more visible because people are now taking more interest, and they are trying to like sort of really get into this space because there's the interest has been peaked a lot of late. And then again, obviously these scams happen. I'm not denying it. There are rug pulls, but you have to, like, if you invest your money in any other in investment class or in any asset, right, you do your own due diligence, right, you do your own research, you make sure that your hands don't get burnt. So why
Agreed.
not do the same thing for crypto, right? Like people get into this thinking that it's like a quick get rich quick scheme. It's not. Like if you are going to see, if you're going to get into any sort of get rich quick scheme anywhere in any sector, then you are like walking into a scam, right? That is something
Right.
that we
Right.
all know and we accept. So why do we not really understand the same thing and hold crypto industry to the same standard? Like it is an industry, it's an industry in its infancy, it's new and it's exciting, and there'll always be some bad elements. Doesn't mean that the bad elements are all that there is. There is some really good technology being tinkered with here, and there are amazing solutions that are being created. So let's look at the good as well. And then there is something very beautiful that Andreas Antonopoulos had said, that whenever people talk to me about these scams or that are happening in the space, I say that scamsters get into everything, right? When there was internet, there was phishing, and even with telephone, people did multiple, there are so many kind of scams, and even till date they keep happening. So you have to
Right.
remember that there is more of us than them, right? There is more of the good element than the bad element. The bad element will always be there because that is just human psychology, right? That is how people
Agreed.
work. That there'll
I would
always be somebody who will
I would
try
like
to
to
figure it
take a
out.
pause here. So sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I think you made an excellent point when you said
No, no,
that
go ahead.
you have to do crypto due diligence. I mean, you have to do due diligence before investing in crypto, right? I think that is where the
Right.
main problem lies, is that people don't have awareness on how to do the due diligence. Like basically scanning the white papers, going through the token economics of that, what are the burn rates and how are the tokens going to be allocated and all of that. Those details are available when you do an ICO or when you invest in tokens. Those details have to be
Right.
like how to audit the white paper and how to essentially audit an ICO is something that is a very, very, very niche skill right now, and not all investors would even know about it. So, any
Right.
suggestions or any basically tips for investors from your end on how to essentially where to look at to get the right kind of information to make sure that you're investing in the right kind of a token?
Sure. So, if you're somebody who's just starting off, then I would say that, you start with the OGs. Like, you start with the Bitcoin, you start with an Ethereum. There is like a huge community behind it. So, you know that, okay, this is not really going to go anywhere. But if you're looking at altcoins and if you're looking at these newer tokens that are coming in the market, then yes, you have to do your own research. And in terms of research, what do? You go and check out their website. You go check out whether the team is anonymous or non-anonymous. Anonymous teams can then you need to like double down on your research. Basically, if the team is also anonymous, not saying that anonymous teams create scam projects. I'm just trying to say that if it's an anonymous team, then yes, you need to perhaps research a little more. Check out their website, check out the vision, check out the underlying product that they are creating to for on the basis of that token. What is the
Right.
vision? Who are the investors, right? There are institutional investors now getting into the crypto space. So who are the
Hmm.
investors behind it? Look at their white paper or their light paper. It can be like, you said it might be really hard for people to sort of look at those white papers which are long. So look at their light paper, right? It's like a
Hmm.
short summary of their vision and try to see, you do that kind of math on your own end. Like you figure out and you gauge whether, this is the right, platform for you to invest in. And most importantly, what you need to keep in mind is that this is like any other even in front of like the mutual funds that right before they come on TV, there is a disclaimer, right? Mutual funds are subject to market risks, right? So you
Right.
need to go with the same thought process here in crypto as well, that there are market risks involved, and don't invest what you cannot afford to lose, right? If you need a high amount of liquidity, obviously you wouldn't want to put that into some sort of a token where it might be difficult to perhaps liquidate it, and if you need the money immediately. So do that kind of diligence. And then the other way to do it would be obviously to follow people who have been in the space for some time. Like get your news from the correct sources, don't not from the mainstream media that hardly understands what crypto and blockchain does. You need to perhaps get it from sources that actually understand and are working in the space for a long time. Follow pages like the Defiant, or look at check CoinGecko, check Coin Market Cap to see how a token is really doing. Check all of
Hmm.
these places and follow founders, follow people who have actually built platforms who are not there to scam you, right? They've been there for some time. So following and getting this information from the right source is also very important.
Got it. Got it. Perfect. That was really insightful. Now, I wanted to talk about decentralized finance and essentially understand what exactly does it cover, and how the different elements in it interact with each other. So, what I've heard in my very short journey in DeFi is there are uh, there are basically investment avenues wherein you can do what you say liquidity swaps, wherein you can earn very high amount of APRs. Then there is staking. So I just wanted to understand a bit more in detail on how essentially, since you are also opening a DeFi platform, how essentially this piece works and what is it all about?
Sure. So DeFi is decentralized finance. Like traditional
Mm-hmm.
finance has centralization of power in terms of the banks holding your money. Decentralized finance essentially means that you are still you still have some autonomy over what you are holding. DeFi
Mm-hmm.
again, it kind of refers to like this parallel economy that is being created, parallel traditional, as against traditional financial system, a system that is being created. So it has all kinds of solutions. There are lending protocols, there is staking, there is farming, and all of those things, where what that would be kind of available in terms of what you can perhaps accomplish and more with the traditional financial mechanism that already exists. So again, yahan pe, that you need to be sort of clear of what you want to accomplish. So you want to like get a loan, then you go to a lending protocol. If you're looking to perhaps get a better yield or a better return on the tokens that you're already holding, then perhaps you're looking at a staking platform. So
Mm-hmm.
again, there are different kinds of so with staking, the usual analogy that I give is think of it like making an FD. Like at least on the Uniform platform that we have, if you are holding tokens, say you are holding Matic, okay, and you
Mm-hmm.
would like to perhaps get like a better return on Matic, then what you need to do is you need to stake these tokens. There is no market exposure, so your principal always remains safe, at least on Unifarm. I'm just talking about Unifarm here. You stake
Mm-hmm.
Matic tokens and you are eligible to then, receive certain other tokens that are part of that particular farm. So as I said, it's a group farming and staking protocol. So if you're staking Matic, you're creating an FD of Matic, but instead of just getting Matic as your yield or your interest, you're actually getting Matic as well as some other tokens in the form of that yield or the interest that you would kind of get. So it's
Got it.
very much like an FD. And with Uniform, you can kind of unstake it at any given point of time as well. So some farms have like a lock-in, but most of them they don't. And there is no market exposure, like I mentioned. But that is not necessarily the case with other staking platforms. So if there is a liquidity farm, then you are essentially providing liquidity for certain tokens. Any token. So let's go back a little bit. Any token that is being listed anywhere, like on a decentralized exchange or a centralized exchange, it needs some liquidity in a pair, right? It wouldn't just be like there has to be some liquidity added to the exchange in the form of the token itself, as well as an equivalent amount, perhaps in a USDT or a USDC. So with a liquidity farm, you're actually adding liquidity for the token itself. It can get you really high APY and APR because that is how those farms function. But there is market exposure to your funds, so you have to keep those
Got
things
it.
in mind.
So let's take a step back. I mean, if I wanted to explain to a layman what a liquidity farm is and what are the origins of it, essentially, from what I understand, it essentially comes from the consensus mechanism that blockchain follows, which is proof of staking, right? Wherein an entity essentially pools the staking and to stake a certain amount of money, they essentially are taking it as a loan from the investors, and then they're giving APY to that investors and then staking that particular token into the blockchain so that they get more confirmations or votes and are able to mine more blocks over there. That is how that entire piece works. But I would just like to
Yeah, so that is
understand a bit more in detail on what exactly a liquidity farm is and how the that entire this piece works.
right. So the way you kind of explained it sounds a little complicated. It is as simple
Mhm.
as you said that you're kind of lending cryptocurrency. And you are putting it in farms. If you are adding to a liquidity farm, then you are adding liquidity basically to a token or its and its pair. So that and then the token itself or the exchange, they will provide you with an interest or some whatever fee like an APR that you get on top of whatever you've put in. But with these liquidity pools, basically, you more often than not, there is a market exposure involved to your funds because literally your funds are sitting on an exchange, right? Where exchange is
Right.
happening of that token, which is pegged to say any currency or a tether. So then there is market exposure, but again there are also yield farming pools which like with Unifarm, we have a very unique proposition. So there is no market exposure to your fund. So if you are like just looking to make some more, make your money work for you, right? Make your tokens
Hmm.
work for you rather than just keeping them in your wallet. You can stake them and earn like a diversified yield. So as I gave you the example, like think of it like an FD that you're making, and instead of just getting, like if you're putting in cash, you're getting more cash. In this case, you're putting in an X token, and you're getting like XYZ, tokens as well in the form of
Got it.
interest.
Got it. So, what are the risks that are associated with investing in staking or basically staking my tokens when there is a market exposure?
So, there is 100% risk if there is market exposure. If you're doing like liquidity pools, obviously, if you're investing in like good, adding liquidity in good projects that have like a sound position and they have sound investors, then that would not really happen. But if you're adding liquidity to newer projects that you have not really done your good research on, then all of that money and your principal can go to zero essentially if there is market
Mhm.
exposure. So it is good to know which program you're staking in and what are the terms there. So, I can't really give a generic answer here and say, okay, this is what happens when you are, staking in a liquidity farm, because there are so many of them. It'll depend a lot on the platform that you're staking on and what are the terms that they are kind of giving you. So you have to like make sure you read the fine print and you make sure you read the terms that they are offering you for staking or adding liquidity to a particular farm. Like I said, with Unifarm, that's not the case, because I'm explaining Unifarm to you end to end that there is no market exposure. But again, that is unique to our platform, and there are so many platforms where you can do liquidity farming. So it will come down to the platform itself, like which platform you're really staking on.
Got it. Got it. So, what essentially do you see as a reaction when this essentially becomes a bit more widespread in a country like India, where the regulation is in gray area, and when proper DeFi becomes popular, like how cryptocurrency is right now? Well, how do you gauge the market reaction would be, and what do you think the right regulatory response should be to this?
See, I think that people are already very curious. People have been bitten by the traditional financial system
Hmm.
way, more than once, right? And they are looking at alternatives. They are trying to become more like, at least the new generations, they are trying to become more financially savvy and financially literate. They want to they are talking and having conversations about financial freedom and wealth creation, and these were things that were not really talked about earlier. So I think that is good progress, and people are looking to see what is the alternative. If not banks, then what? If not the traditional financial system, then what? And DeFi is kind of creating that entire this spectrum and plethora of places that can be like an alternative. In terms of what you said, right? What really happens when a lot of people in India start getting into it? I think that has already started. Like WazirX recently, I think only yesterday it came out in Mint that WazirX saw like 10x user growth in 2021. So already
Right.
people are getting very, very involved in crypto, and for good, like I wouldn't say that all they're getting into it with a lot of curiosity, but as I said that you're going to give you'll feel like you've been burnt by crypto if you don't do your research properly, and if you're just following trends. So there was
Hmm.
like this token that was inspired by Squid Game recently, right? And it was
Right.
like a huge rug pull, right? It was a scam. You could
Yes.
see that it was a scam. So for the seasoned guys, it was a scam. You could see it, but then people nevertheless kind of invested in that the token and lost a lot of their money, more so in places like China, etc., than in India. But again, here, you have to be careful in where you are putting your hard-earned money. Do not don't get swayed away when people are saying, okay, we are going to give you an X return or Y return. Unless don't get into like these schemes. Basically, there are Ponzi schemes and otherwise as well, right? These MLMs,
Hmm.
etc. So you are advised to stay away from them. So here again, follow the same process. Do your due diligence before putting in your money.
Right, right. So, talking about being wary and being mindful, what do you say
Hmm.
would be the best practices to keep in mind for a beginner when they are investing in crypto or in basically in DeFi also?
Okay. So basically, what you need to keep in mind, as I mentioned, that you need to sort of do your own due diligence, do your own research, like check out the website of the of the token that you want to sort of invest in, the platform that you want to invest in. Check out the team behind it. Check out who is investing in this. There are, there will be some, as I mentioned, that there are perhaps traditional, VCs who are also now trying to get into this space. So see who the investors are, see who the promoters are, check what their vision is, and see like whether the token has any real utility, like whether there is a working product or not behind it yet. Because a lot of people, it's like very easy to just create a token, right? But to create a token that is actually solving or facilitating and solving a larger problem with a working product, those are not that many in this space. So you if you do a little bit of research in terms of spending some time and checking these few things out, looking them up, and getting their reviews, that would be like a good place to start from, I think.
Got it. Perfect. Now, moving the topic a bit towards NFT, just quickly wanted to understand what an NFT is. And since there has been a lot of hype, right? Even celebrities in Bollywood have got into it, but general public still does not have clarity apart from what mainstream media has talked about NFT. So, a bit more technical understanding of what an NFT is, and is it an investment avenue, or is it which industry do you think it will be revolutionizing next? And yeah, over to you.
So, NFTs have become big of late, but and it's kind of evolving as we speak. So initially, NFTs are, by the way, non-fungible tokens. Basically, that means that they are completely unique. These are
Mm-hmm.
not tokens that can be replaced by any other. So, say if you're buying a token, which is initially, as I said, that NFTs are associated more with the creator economy. That you can create a piece of art and you can
Mm-hmm.
basically tokenize it and then sell it. So that it was supposed to push the creators and perhaps the entertainment industry, like anybody who's creating newer things, they can perhaps tokenize it and have a wider audience per se. But there are now newer use cases that are coming up for NFTs as we are maturing, and the
Mm-hmm.
space is maturing. Recently, basically, Twitter kind of announced that they want to do the blue tick that you see, right, on the verification tick that you see on your profiles. They want
Right.
to associate profiles and identity with an NFT. So that is like a new use case, right? And there are multiple
Mm-hmm.
new use cases that are coming up now with with the gaming industry and with the metaverse coming in. So I believe that this is an ever evolving sort of a space, at least now, because we are still very, very, very early. And where it'll land up, it's something that people can just make an educated guess about. But there are a lot more interesting new use cases that are coming up in the NFT space. And again, do your own due diligence before, like putting in the money in these spaces, and not just follow trends.
Got it. Got it. So when we essentially look at future of the media and entertainment industry, do you see these licenses being replaced by NFTs, or essentially wherein there could be an investment avenue for what do you say, retail investors to invest in movies and all of that? Is that a possible use case as well?
Absolutely, I think now Bollywood celebrities have come up with their own NFT collections, and I think that is like a very valid use case that is coming up. That
Mm-hmm.
later, like with you basically, this data is on blockchain, right? So there is no there's 100% transparency and immutability. So you can definitely see a use case panning out where the entertainment industry is essentially using these NFTs to copyright their stuff and basically make sure that the data is being and the rights are being protected of the creators.
Got it. Got it. And as of now, from a regulatory point of view, NFT is also in a gray area, right? Where what is the
Yeah,
current
but
standing?
NFT would also fall into crypto, right? So if crypto is like unregulated, regulated as of now in India, then yes, so is the case with NFTs. Right now, it would all just fall kind of under the, perhaps the Contract Act that, you're buying something in the digital space.
Okay. Okay. Got it. I think yeah, that's about it. We have good enough view on NFTs, DeFi, as well as what does crypto investing in crypto industry looks like from your point of view.
Yeah.
Any specific things that you want to address in the industry?
Not really. I think this is something, I don't to get tired of repeating. Just please do your own research before getting into the space. Remember that there are more good people than bad people. But like as is the case anywhere in any industry, you might meet bad elements, a lot more just because, you don't understand something very well. So don't fear it. Don't let the lack of understanding stop you from getting into this space. There are immense opportunities, and not just for people who are investing or people who are developers, but for people in all, with all kinds of profiles. So it's a very exciting space. Do your own research, get into it, start small, and there's nothing wrong with starting small, and just like make your way from there. I think once you do start small, there's going to be a hyper learning phase for you. You learn a lot new things. It will open up your mind to newer ideas. So it's very exciting. It's
Mhm.
almost like I'm calling for people to join a cult, but I'm just be open to the idea of exploring new ideas. Start small and just be careful, like with any other investment that you do.
Definitely. Perfect. I think these are, really good takeaways for our audience to keep in mind when they start investing in their crypto journey, or essentially they are starting to invest in the DeFi space as well. Thank you so much, Tarusha. I
Exactly.
think this has been a really good conversation, and it was a
Thank you
pleasure
so
having
much
you
for
here.
having me.